afternoon. I am proposing that since it is a small group, we should really move towards question and answer instead of giving a long introduction. Everybody is familiar with recently that India has unveiled its plan for the Paris conference. When we talk of the 2030, what are going to be the targets of the green energy? They have become already part of that. So what I thought that we could start with Mrs. Anjali Sharma, she has presentation, and particularly she has looked at the Renewable Energy Act, whether it is 11, why it has been done. Then I think all the analysts, they are all my old colleagues. It's a real pleasure to be sitting here, and that's why Mr. Raja asked me that whether I would chair it. I said it will be real going back to the old days. I look forward to this session.
ठीक है बेटा
Can I use this, sir? Good afternoon and a very sunny welcome to all of you. We are going to talk about sun and wind, but we are slowly moving towards renewable energy India and towards digital India. And now you can see what are the problems in digital India, compatibility issues and various other problems. But slowly and surely we'll move towards digital India and renewable energy India. So India's economy is likely to quadruple and it will become world's most populous nation by 2030. And electricity use is growing in India and it is largely generated with fossil fuels, around 70%, and consequent greenhouse gas emissions. India is world's third largest greenhouse gas source behind China and the US. And full exploitation of RE resources can provide India energy security and long-run GHG emission reductions. That was just as a background. A decade ago, RE adoption was solely an aspirational goal. Today, it is rapidly becoming a commercial proposition with the important and positive social and macroeconomic impacts. There is quick capacity deployment. It takes significantly less time for installation compared with conventional generation. In fact, a solar plant of say 500 megawatt can be set up in 6 months to 1 year, and we are planning for huge solar parks under our RE program. The generation will be ready sooner than the transmission for evacuating it. You can see how quick is the capacity deployment. It would lead to import substitution, improves energy security, reduces trade deficit, and supports faster and more sustainable economic growth. There can be a resource substitution. It reduces the demand for cooling water, freeing scarce future water supplies to be used for human use and agriculture. And lastly but not the least, hedges against future world price volatility. No fuel cost. So, towards this, the installed capacity of renewable energy sources as on 31/8/2015 was 37,010 megawatt, with biomass being 4,418, wind power being the maximum of 24,000, and a solar power of 4,229 megawatt as on 31/8/2015. RE potential is vast and largely untapped in our country. Recent estimates indicate that India's solar potential is greater than something again happened to the digital world. I'm sorry about that. You know, mission is quite a long way off. Well, so as I was saying, that recent estimates indicate that India's solar potential is greater than 10,000 gigawatt, and its wind potential could be higher than 2,000 gigawatts. Earlier, as per earlier studies, it was 746 or 748 gigawatts sun potential. But recent estimates have shown that it is much higher. And GOI has quintupled its RE target for solar to reach 100 gigawatt and plan 60 gigawatt of wind, 10 gigawatt of biomass and 5 gigawatt of other RE sources by 2022. That is the program, as we all know, of our Honorable Prime Minister. And for this, as we all know, most renewables have zero fuel costs, but they are more capital intensive than conventional fossil fuel power plants. And to take full advantage of India's RE potential, new initiatives are required from central and state governments beyond the policies and programs currently in place. India would have to raise the necessary capital and get comfortable with managing the variability and uncertainty of renewable energy generation, as we all know. If you look at the variability of wind generation, this is the variability of wind generation over various months in 2013, 14 and 14, 15 of the already installed plants. We have put that together. And the pattern of renewable energy generation in India, as you can see, for wind generation, annual wind generation and annual solar generation. So handling this type of generation is going to become a very big challenge for India. And India's load curve in 2022, this is an illustrative curve, it is not to scale, but just to show you that what is going to happen if we are going to have 100 gigawatt of solar by 2022. This is the type of thing we are going to have.
100.
So we'll have, our plant load factor currently is around 64% in 14-15, and it is going to go down further with this 100 gigawatt of solar by 2022. We'll have plants which will run for a very, very short period. We require peaking plants, and we require fast and flexible generation, fast ramp down and fast ramp up plants to meet this variability.
And this is a study conducted by LBN?
No, this was a study conducted by Vatsala. They have done this because they are promoting flexible generation, they are promoting their gas engines, so this was as per a study done by Vatsala. And it is just illustrative, just to show that what is going to happen if we have 100 gigawatt solar by 2022, as planned. So a roadmap for renewable energy till 2030 has been prepared by NITI Aayog. There is a report on India's renewable electricity roadmap 2030 towards accelerated renewable and electricity deployment, which is on the website of NITI Aayog. They have said there are 5 core principles for development of renewable energy. Treat renewable energy as a resource of national and strategic importance. Mandate RE as a significant component of the power sector. Take an integrated approach to power sector planning, including generation, transmission and distribution. Make buyers indifferent between conventional and RE resources until grid parity is achieved. And give small-scale distributed RE close to end users priority equal to large-scale centralized RE. These are the 5 core principles mandated in that report. It also quotes, talks about a quote by former member Energy of the erstwhile Planning Commission of India. He said, "We should not get into the mindset that RE is the intruder and conventional energy is the main player. Why not consider RE to be a main occupant of the house and then work out the rest of the system around renewable energy? Essentially because renewable energy is the future." We advocate that we should work everything around the RE framework. So the NITI Aayog report talks about the framework for an integrated policy strategy. He says a new comprehensive national RE law and/or policy and its components should be mandated. There should be implementation of support mechanisms, reforms to ensure smooth grid integration of renewable energy, and it also talks about energy access and off-grid RE considerations. So in the national RE law and or policy, it says a comprehensive, transparent, long-term and definitive legislative policy framework for RE should be implemented by amending existing laws, policies, for example, address electricity-related aspects from the Electricity Act, and or creating a new law or policy dedicated to renewable energy as a whole. The national RE law or policy should establish targets, identify financial support required for achieving targets, undertake integrated energy resource planning, a restructured and reinforceable renewable purchase obligation, and a mandatory net metering or feed-in tariff. The integrated electricity resource planning should consider all sources of electricity supply side, conventional and RE, generation, transmission and distribution, demand side efficiency, demand response, and consider all costs and benefits, direct and indirect, and externalities and co-benefits. Usually our IRP doesn't take into integrated resource planning is not taking into account the indirect and external benefits, but he says that this should be done in case of RE. It also says that RE grid integration and more efficient grid operation should take place by upgrading grid technology, upgrade grid operation protocols, upgrade grid codes. We should have 5-minute scheduling and dispatch, which is currently 15 minutes, expand balancing areas, and promote flexible demand and supply sources. It also says that support mechanisms for compliance and timely implementation should be there. The report suggests one-stop shop for standardized contracting and streamlining the contracting process. This could be achieved by establishing a new CERC regulated intermediary institution that centrally procures RE from developers at an auction price and sells to bulk buyers. In the current scenario, the DISCOMs are purchasing directly from the RE sources, but this report suggests that there should be a central agency to procure from all the RE buyers and supply to the bulk buyers. Then there should be some financial support and disbursal mechanism, streamlined project development, and low-cost financing available to the project developers. It also talks of energy access and off-grid RE, as I said earlier. It says that 1/3 of India's population does not have access to electricity. Most of the DISCOMs are struggling to provide the minimum lifeline supply of 1 unit per household per day to the rural areas. RE sources could rapidly bridge India's energy access challenge in a cost-effective manner, immediately providing standalone off-grid systems in remote rural areas for home lighting and running other basic appliances. And over time, these systems could play the same role as that of rooftop systems in urban areas. That means they could be connected to the grid over time. And in parallel, developing district and block level plans for providing electricity through deployment of microgrids or mini grids using RE sources. Then we come this was in brief what the renewable report, Niti Aayog's report talks about. Then there is a draft National Renewable Energy Act 2015. In October 2014, the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy Sources had constituted an expert committee to provide a draft Renewable Energy Act. The committee met on 7th November 2014 and decided to constitute a subgroup to collate the suggestions and propose a draft group, and the subgroup has prepared a draft Renewable Act of India. I will indicate what is there in this draft Renewable Act 2015. It consists of 7 parts. First is the preliminary, second is the institutional structure, third is deployment of supportive ecosystem for renewable energy development. Fourth chapter talks about economic and financial framework. Fifth about distributed energy resource applications and energy access. Sixth talks about grid connected renewable electricity, and seventh talks about miscellaneous matters. So it suggests that there should be a National Renewable Energy Committee with the representation from MNRE, Agricultural Ministry, Ministry of Power, Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Heavy Industries, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, and Ministry of Environment and Forests. There should be JS level officers from these states. There should be 2 JS, and there should be representation from POSOCO, RPC, CEA, CTU, REC, IREDA, and 1 each of JS equivalent. And the functions of this National Renewable Energy Committee would be overseeing implementation of national RE policy and plan, suggest measures to upscale deployment, R&D, grid integration, and monitor progress of RE investment goals. And from my side, I find that there is no representation of a regulator in these committees, but that has not yet been put. Then there will be a National Renewable Advisory Group. The provision of this National Renewable Advisory Group is with chairperson, 2 eminent persons as members, JSMNRE, Association of SNAs, there are the state nodal agencies, IREDA, RECI, then there will be a Renewable Energy Corporation of India, which I will come to later, CEA, POSOCO, CTU, and 6 members from stakeholders. Their functions include identifying priorities for development capacity building and utilization of National RE Fund, long-term vision for integrated resource planning, and publish annual reports and issue based reports. Then there will be a constitution of a RE Corporation of India as suggested by NITI Aayog. This shall act as a national level RE procurement entity. It will be called Renewable Energy Corporation of India. It will support development of renewable energy investment zones across the country. Ministry shall through RECI with state governments identify and develop RE investment zones to meet the goals under National RE Development Plan. National RE policy shall be aimed at the optimum and integrated development of the renewable energy sector and its implications. The policy shall be based on priorities set by the National Energy Policy and on the principles of integrated energy resource planning. Establish broad principles for medium and long-term RE targets, building upon the targets specified by the RE policy, notified under the Rural Electrification Policy, notified under the Electricity Act. Shall include electricity as well as non-electricity pricing, target compliance, and facilitate a move towards a market-based mechanism for RE in the long run. It should also include national targets for next 5 years and indicative targets for additional 10 years period. It shall specify the regulatory policy, institutional and incentive frameworks required for achieving the objectives of this Act and national targets, and undertake midterm assessment with no provision for downward revision of targets. There shall be an RE resource assessment for all electric and non-electric applications such as utility scale electricity generation, distribution and decentralized electricity and energy generation. It doesn't say who will do the RE resource assessment, but it says there will be a RE resource assessment, and the assessments will be made available in public domain in open data format. And they should be accompanied by GIS layers of the supporting grid network. Then there will be model guidelines by MNRE. Actually, everything centers in the Act around MNRE, so MNRE has to lay down the policy, the guidelines for promotion of distributed renewables through effective and monitorable incentive structures, land use for RE projects, process for local consent, and a formal institutional structure for revenue benefit sharing with the community. I think this land use has been put because land is not available. It has to be converted. The use has to be converted for RE projects. Then renewable energy infrastructure parks for faster and planned project development. These are already underway. Best practices on streamlining of project permits, best practices for state grid codes, RE integration practices for SLDCs and data management, and standard bidding guidelines and SPDs under Section 3 of the Electricity Act, it says here. Then there shall be a National Renewable Energy Fund. MNRE will establish the National Renewable Energy Fund. It will be funded by at least, it doesn't say the percentage, proceeds from National Clean Energy Fund, supported by the ongoing cess on coal consumption through appropriate cess levy and through international finance, including funds received under any climate agreement. This is to be used for reducing risk and cost of capital, subsidy, infrastructure development, R&D, adoption of international best practices, and equity participation in RE projects. It doesn't say that it will be towards payment guarantee, but currently this fund is also being used for payment guarantee as DISCOMs are not able to pay the developers. So there is a proposal to use this fund for a sort of security towards payment to the DISCOMs, because the biggest issue in RE projects is payment by the DISCOMs. So that NCEF is being used for payment to the DISCOMs. There is a proposal for that. Sorry, sir. It also says that MNRE shall create a national uniform and mandatory renewable purchase obligation trajectory for all obligated entities. Currently, the practice is that SERCs fix the RPO trajectory for all obligated entities, and each SERC follows its own trajectory. But there is a proposal under this Act that there shall be a uniform renewable RPO for the DISCOM and all obligated entities.
So it will have a overriding effect on electricity at 2003.
Yes, of course. I do not know how they are going to change that, but then there may be subsequent changes.
But there is no provision like that.
This is just a draft at this
Anyway,
stage.
let's not get into this. We'll be discussing all this.
Yes, sir, because this is the draft which is there. Then obligation shall be made through purchase of renewable electricity from RE generator anywhere in the country, and RE sources which will be eligible for RPO compliance shall be utility scale RE generation, behind the meter renewable energy. This basically talks like, I'll explain what is behind the meter renewable energy in the next slide. Off-grid systems based on RE, providing electricity or equivalent services, and provision of a RGO, renewable generation obligation on the conventional generators. There will be a renewable generation obligation on the conventional generators, all those who are generating from fossil fuels, and there shall be a penalty for non-compliance of RPO RGO as per the draft Act provisions. So the concept of behind the meter generation is, it refers to a generation unit that delivers energy to load without using the transmission system or any distribution facilities, unless the entity that owns or leases the distribution facilities has consented to such use of the distribution facilities. It basically means rooftop generation. Behind the meter generation will be rooftop generation. So the Act says that that will also be eligible for RPO compliance. So there will be a payment guarantee. They say obligated entities shall within 1 year of the establishment of the RPO trajectory develop 5-year renewable electricity procurement plans, and CA shall review all regulated obligated entities procurement plans in order to identify and report to respective SERCs opportunities for cost reduction through coordination and cooperation among all the entities across the country, and MNRE to establish clear guidelines for procurement mechanisms. There will be no surcharge for open access customer for procurement of renewable energy, and regulated obligated entities to create adequate payment security, and payment for procured renewable energy shall get the same priority as procurement for other procured power. That means for conventional, whatever priority is being given, that will be given for payment for RE sources. It also talks about access to grid connectivity, which says the operator of the transmission and/or distribution systems shall do so within 30 days from the date of application or commencement of generation. Cost of grid connectivity for wind and solar PV projects beyond interconnection point shall be borne by the operator of the network system, and deemed generation shall be given if the grid is not available for power evacuation, as it is happening in Tamil Nadu after the project has commenced generation or is already operational. So that if any RE source is backed down due to system security considerations, then he will get a deemed generation benefit. There shall also be a RE forecasting, and MNRE shall designate an entity. The Power System Corporation of India may be as the nodal entity for the task of developing forecast for all RE generation connected to the grid, because managing the variability of the RE requires forecasting of the renewable energy source, and all new renewable electricity generators will provide all production data to the nodal entity. But I think all new and existing will provide this data, though it is written like this, so I put it like this. So this is all about the RE Act. Government of India has been taking many initiatives. A joint Indo-US Space Setup Fund has been established with a contribution of $4 million from each side to enhance clean energy cooperation. Union Cabinet of India has approved 15,000 megawatt of grid-connected solar projects for NTPC. US federal agencies have committed a total of $4 billion for projects and equipment sourcing. Then a memorandum of collaboration has been signed between IITs and ONGC to work towards a collective R&D program for developing indigenous technologies. RBI has notified to include renewable energy under private sector lending, and banks can provide loans up to a limit of $2.36 million to borrowers for renewable energy projects. Andhra Pradesh government also plans to establish an energy university which would focus on research orientation and development of energy efficiency, energy conservation and renewable energy sources. So this is what is happening on the renewable energy front at the government level. And since you all know, we already have an Electricity Act and we are now going to have a draft Renewable Energy Act. So how they will both coexist is a question which is debatable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So we have seen the renewable energy draft policies. I got further confused how to manage all these issues. You can't manage through committees, associations, and something like that. So Act has to be an Act. It should look like law, and this law should not have any interference with either law. It should be very explicit. The Electricity Act is an exemplary piece of law book, which is very perfect. As I have gone through this Act, and this Act also says that any provisions of this Act will supersede any other provisions which are available in either Act. That is how the Act has to prevail. There is no confusion. Now, on electricity subject, you can't have two laws to be administered by different ministries or whatever. This will not survive like that. So, I would say that more thoughtful considerations have to go into this. This would be a very sketchy draft paper which has been prepared by someone. I don't know how this has been released. Number one. Number two, it's very easy to say something, renewable energy, solar, then no fuel and all those things. But someone should know the impact. No? I can say that going to moon is very good and you must go and all those things. Can you go to the moon? It could cost some money. You have to facilitate this to happen, and all those things are there. Now, I give only one example to you that very often people are talking distributed generation system. Far-flung areas, non-grid connected, you must install solar, wind and all. Now, first of all, the cost of this power is unaffordable for the time being. And during the daytime, in the villages, rural areas, they don't need electricity and all. They can sit outside, they can manage. What do you do in the evening time? Now I pose this question to some of the developers who are promoting without sharing. I said, okay, can you manage a distributed generation system with solar power, with some good batteries, which will also be guaranteed for 25-30 years, because solar plant life is 25 years. All of them said that we can manage provided you give us 20 rupees a unit. Because these batteries are very expensive. For the time being, I also found out some states who are installing some batteries somewhere, these batteries have got a life of 2 to 3 years. You have to replace these batteries. Now, has anybody taken into consideration, including MNRE, who is supposed to be the father of this renewable source of energy? Now, if the life of the solar plant is 25 years, a battery which lasts for 2 to 3 years, you will have to replace 8 to 10 times. Number one. The capacity of the battery which has to be designed has to cater to the peak requirement of that area. It has to cater to the battery charging for the night hours. And in general, I came to know that the battery capacity in terms of that ampere hours and all has to be 3 times the capacity of the solar or whatever capacity you put in. So in sum total, the cost of electricity in that rural area, poor people, 30% of the population who have no access to electricity, we are telling them that to pay 20 rupees a unit and will provide electricity. How far are we being practical in that situation? Now sooner or later, these areas are going to be connected to the grid. We are not able to connect it now, we will have to connect it later. We provide the microgrids now, but later on these microgrids have to be connected. The cost remains a big issue. Now my personal, sometimes I keep on thinking, what is the urgency we have? Do we import 100% of this solar? The cell and everything, including the inverters and all those things which are not being manufactured in this country, and install it? After all, solar is available to us. Let us indigenize this, let us develop this, let us bring down the cost of generation of this equipment. These are not the cost of these products. These are monopolized items and being exploited. I am very sure about it. Like wind. Wind also costs here some 6 crores per megawatt. Now can you compare a wind plant with a conventional coal-fired power plant? It has a boiler, it has a turbine, it has an auxiliary system, it has coal handling, ash handling, water treatment, and whole lots of technologies there. It costs 3 to 4 crores per megawatt. It might touch some 4.5 or 5 crores somewhere, depending on this one. And wind is 6 crores per megawatt. It has a fan and it has some electronics and something like that. It is an exploitation. On the top of it, government was giving 100% depreciation to the wind, you might recall, 2 years ago. We discussed in the Planning Commission, the then Planning Commission, and Planning Commission agreed, because they installed the wind plant, took 100% depreciation in the first year itself and ran it around. We do not know whether those winds were actually operating or not. MNRE, as a department of the Government of India, was unable to monitor. I am making some criticism of the policy, not that I am against this. I said we can go in a manner which is practical. Those wind plants, 60 to 70% of those wind plants are not generating today. They have taken 100% depreciation on them. Then this was abolished by the government for a few years. But again, this lobby has approached the government and are able to again get some 90% depreciation. Again. We said that you give some incentive on generation. If generation-based some incentive is given, that is justified. You generate and take something. But not on capital base is not justified. Now then, the program is 1 lakh or 1,75,000 megawatt appears to be is far from practical, and we may not achieve the targets. We might show the word yes, we are going ahead. And nobody is thinking that whether it is, are we comfortable with this? Whether those countries who have adopted large solar and wind installation, are they happy? We didn't get the feedback. Germany is one country who has adopted, there are also political issues there. Germany has slightly exceeding 30,000 megawatt of solar and 30,000 megawatt of wind, and their total demand, peak demand, is also touching 60,000 megawatt. Their conventional capacity is around 1,20,000 megawatt or something like that. It might change. When the sun shines and wind blows, they are able to manage with this wind and solar. But suddenly, if it is a cloudy season or the wind is not there, they ask their conventional generation to come up. Now, during this process, they damaged very badly their conventional 800 and 900 megawatt units. This is a very positive feedback I am giving you. It is confirmed from those people, and they are in a mess really what to do. German team came here and they were appreciating us that at least you have some regulation in regard to solar and wind. When we in CRC were making regulations and we gave them a target of plus minus 30% generation forecast a day ahead, 15 minutes interval, all these developers were objecting to that. We are not able to do that. We must run station. We will not pay any penalties. But somebody has to bear those penalties if the grid discipline has to be maintained. And they were able to secure some orders from the Regulatory Commission that we are not, will not be subjected to the grid discipline or grid code. How can this happen? How can you take your car to the road without observing the traffic rules? You can't do that. It took us long time to convince these people that if you get connected to the grid, you must follow the grid rules and regulations and grid code. You must observe them. But till today, the situation is that they are not very happy about it, and they are approaching the government, higher people, that this plus minus 30% of the CRC norm.
Now they have mandated a new framework.
Now they are mandating.
Plus minus 15% of the installed capacity.
See, this is funny, very funny. If the installed capacity is 1000 megawatt, but you are running only 100 megawatt, how can you give a relaxation of plus minus 15% of 1000 megawatt? This we have been arguing with CRC, and when Dr. Pramod Dev was there, we did not.
It's not detailed because CRC has come with new draft regulation.
No, sir, it is now.
It is now final, and they had dealt with it.
But the practicability of this has to be seen.
So that will take up that
Yeah.
because we wanted completely opposite view, no?
But it is
So
now
these are the
correct.
problems related with that. Now, the consequence of this is, as Germany is busy now prescribing new tough material specifications for the conventional power plants. Because if you have to induct the solar, which it appears it is a must now, we must design our conventional power stations, the 660 megawatt or 500 megawatt or 200 megawatt units, to sustain this kind of a off and on variations in their generation standards. Even in our country, Haryana and other one more state has damaged their generators. Gujarat, because of renewable energy. The rotors got cracks, the insulators of the generators have broken, and even the blades have developed cracks. But there is no attention of the government or concerned department. It is because I have a very strong feeling that this MNRE is non-professionally organized. It is those people who are dealing with it without having, for example, Ministry of Power has got a whole of CA at their back to advise them to go into this, and then the conventional ministry, conventional power, has got NTPC, NSPC Power Grid. They became the strong organizations to advise the government if there is anything else. But in the renewable energy sector, research and development and capacity addition has been combined together. There is no discrimination. You might dump something and then, okay, I will install this one and that. So, my advice and suggestion in this regard would be, let this sector be more professionally organized. The solar and wind is not non-engineering items. The design and engineering standards and norms have to be finalized. Now, what is the capacity of 1 megawatt of a solar has to be defined. It is not an arithmetic sum of the modules of 100 kilowatt, 1 megawatt. Any other country does not follow this. You have to see the diagonal variations of the solar insolation, provide for that capacity. Suppose there is some solar and all, and if the insolation reduces, then 1 megawatt may not give 1 megawatt, it may give 0.8 megawatt. Therefore, provide that redundancy in the solar panels so that it gives on an average the capacity which you want. Many large number of solar stations which have been installed here. One example I give of Andaman, 5 megawatt NTPC people are here. How much can you find out how much it generates? It doesn't generate even 1 megawatt. But it is a 5 megawatt station. It is on the record that like that we have added, the renewable some 37,000 per 1,000 megawatt. I mean, we have to be purposeful, we have to be objective, and we should know where we are going, what are we doing. And the policy network has to be very strong. And we must provide for example, like that, there are many issues in solar rooftop also. The policy which the government has, the Delhi government has announced, I had the opportunity of going through it. There are several such issues. I think there is a need for a brainstorming with these documents in your front. Each item, each page, each word. And then some group, a professional group who understands this has to go into this and advise the government what is required to be done. This is my suggestion. Thank you.
Very good afternoon. It's a privilege to sit on this panel with all the veterans co-panelists. Sir, I would take first the act, or the draft act, and as you had already mentioned, let's not get into the discussion whether two acts can be governing the same commodity or the same sector. I will just quote only one small example. I asked a very senior lawyer what would happen when you have two acts governing the same sector. He says if it is not drafted properly, it would be the lawyer's delight. So it would be a landmine from a legal perspective. So this is a first step, which is a very, I should say, a very preliminary draft which has come up, which basically shows more of an intent rather than an act. So from that point of view, it's a good start, but we have to keep in mind all these legal landmines while reaching the final legislation. I don't know how much time it is going to take. Some of the things which were there are also can be addressed in the main Electricity Act amendments, which unfortunately I think are now getting into the back burner. But many of these things have been there in the Electricity Act amendment provisions. So this is, as far as the Act is concerned, maybe we can look at it, look at requirement of this Act more for the decentralized renewable energy systems, which may be generating off-grid power or off-grid energy, like thermal energy, etc., where the sector is not governed by a single act at the central level to promote those technologies. I think while drafting the Act, we have not looked at what is the point, why do you want this Act? What are the shortcomings of the existing provisions into the Electricity Act, which we want to remove by bringing in the Renewable Energy Act? We have good provisions in the Electricity Act, and one line which I remember from the previous presentation, though it was not from the draft RE Act, was restructured and enforceable RPOs. Now I am really curious to understand what is enforceable RPO and what is non-enforceable RPO. Do we mean to say that the Electricity Act has a RPO which is non-enforceable? I think there are enough provisions into the existing Electricity Act for enforcement of RPO. And barring few states which have actually used those provisions and enforced RPOs, most of the states have, or the state regulators have chosen not to enforce it. So it's not the shortcoming of the Electricity Act per se, it's the shortcoming of how do you enforce it. And while bringing in another act, are we going to solve this this issue of enforcement? Another point which Dr. Dev has very aptly mentioned, that the action in case of, especially in case of renewables, happens at the state level. And how much...
Not only if you take electricity.
Right, sir. Everything, I mean, the main action happens
Chief
at...
Minister will not allow you to enter their state. No?
What is happening?
So the action actually happens at the state level. What kind of buy-in from the states do we have, and what kind of jurisdiction the central ministry would have it? So these are the broad issues on the Electricity Act, on the draft Renewable Energy Act. Notwithstanding that, what I look forward for renewable energy, because that is also one of the issues that we wanted to discuss, is now we have reached a stage in India that whether we like it or not, renewable is going to play a major role. It's up to us how do we want to shape it. As far as wind is concerned, it has reached, it has followed a certain trajectory of growth and learning and reached to a stage. And solar has started recently following a different trajectory. From wind's perspective, what I would see is, if you look at the 60 gigawatt target, and if you actually look at what states are doing in their individual policies, it would not add up to 15 to 20,000 megawatts of capacity addition in next 5 years. So that means we would be reaching around 45,000 or so. And it's a best case scenario as far as today's understanding of policies at the state level is concerned. That brings us back again to the question of when we decide this target, what was the state's money? Because there are, unfortunately, in case of wind, we have only 7 or 8 states which are rich in wind resource. So what are those states' thoughts about further looking at renewable energy? So what in case of wind is going to happen is, if at all we want to do this 60 gigawatt, we will have to look at interstate sale of wind power, either through actual power or through RECs. Unfortunately, on all this discussion in recent days, we more or less written off the REC mechanism, it seems, which is a good mechanism if we actually want to do the interstate transactions, not actually transacting power, but meeting RPOs, which again brings back to the question of RPO enforcement. So wherever we try to get back to a single question of enforcement of RPOs, and does any of these discussions would actually enforce that. So interstate transaction has to happen in wind to at least think of reaching 60 gigawatts or adding 35,000 megawatts in next 5-6 years. The second biggest challenge we're going to face is obviously the variable nature. And we have moved from 2010, when Mr. Verma has mentioned that the industry had certain views on scheduling and forecasting, to a stage in 2015 where the industry associations are coming forward and doing wind power scheduling. So that's the change that has happened, because the industry also has realized that in order to grow, the scheduling or following the grid rules cannot be escaped. So these are the two challenges which I would say wind is going to face in next few years to reach 60 gigawatt. So coming to the last point where there was a specific mention about costs and comparison between wind and conventional. If you read 2012 CERC's RE tariff regulation, it has in the statement of reason, it has got a very detailed item-wise cost breakup of wind projects. One generally cannot compare between the wind power project of 100 megawatt and a comparable 250 megawatt of a coal power plant. 100 megawatt wind power project would require at least 50 foundations. 50 transformers, 50 towers, 150 blades of 60 to 80 meter length of a single piece, transportation of the same. So we are not comparing the same things when we compare cost of a thermal power plant with cost of a wind power plant. In India, if you look at it, compare with any of the other costs internationally, the project costs, which includes the turnkey project cost in India for a wind power project is lowest in the world, which is also lower than the Chinese projects cost which have been reported. So yes, cost is a consideration because capex is a major issue when we look at it for a wind power project. But it's not same to, or it's not right to compare it with coal projects or any of the other thermal power plants. Cost can further be reduced provided we have volumes. And if you see last 3-4 years, the fluctuations in capacity additions, right from 3,200 megawatts, then we come to 700 megawatts, then we go to 2,200, then we go to 2,300, and this year we might be again 2,300. So this kind of checkered growth does not give a signal to the industry at what kind of investment in terms of manufacturing, project development I need to do, and those costs obviously get added on the project costs. So these are as far as the cost aspect is concerned. I have commented mainly from the point of view of wind power. And there seems to be a flavor that today we are going to do a lot of solar, or we are going to do 100 megawatts or 100 gigawatts of solar, and it looks very attractive solar, and we more or less given away all other renewable energy technologies, focusing on solar. My only submission is going to be that all technologies, all renewable energy technologies, will have their pluses and minuses. When you reach a certain stage in terms of installed capacity, then only the other or the negative aspects of that particular technology would come into picture. Like when we reached 24,000 megawatts of wind, then suddenly we realized unless until you schedule it, you cannot add it further. So similarly, when we reach a certain capacity in solar, we will also have faced different challenges. So the idea is to have a healthy mix of renewables rather than putting all our efforts in one technology. So that is all, sir, from my side.
Renewable energy, as a country, we have been propagating it now easily for about 20 years. In fact, even prior to the Electricity Act 2003, in many states, including Maharashtra, for example, there has been an incentivization of wind. Wind finally took a big spurt thanks to the accelerated depreciation provided by the Ministry of Finance. After all this, solar has two kinds of things. There is solar photovoltaic and solar thermal. Willy-nilly, there appears to be, by default, let us say, more emphasis on solar photovoltaic. Whether it is solar photovoltaic or solar thermal, you do require land. And the land availability for such projects will finally depend on the opportunity cost of land. That is, if that land can be used for a purpose which will give you a lot of return. For example, if agriculturalists can grow crops there, 2-3 crops, that land is unlikely to come for solar. So right now there seems to be a comparative advantage for solar in those states where the opportunity cost of land is very low. That's why there is a lot of comparative advantage, let us say in Rajasthan, in Gujarat, in the Ladakh area of Jammu and Kashmir. Ladakh is a cold desert, and Rajasthan and Gujarat has a lot of area which are basically deserts. Now, so when you say, I think out of this 100 gigawatts of solar, 60 gigawatts is assumed as 60-40.
So 20 gigawatt is parks, 40 gigawatt is utility scale RE projects, and 40,000 is rooftops.
So if you take this and calculate the total land that you require, it's very large. And as you're aware, the land acquisition or land problems are dodging a large number of our developmental projects, not merely in the energy sector. Land acquisition is a very, very sensitive subject. And procuring new land, particularly if there's other valuable use, is not as easy as it appears. People are well organized. Having said that, at least after the new government came, there appears to be a reinforced emphasis on renewable. The previous government had this Prime Minister's action plan on climate change. And under that action plan, there were two items of the energy sector which got prominence. One was the energy efficiency area, and second was use of renewable energy. The new government has started from that, but have increased the targets substantially. There are clearly both technical issues involved in it as to how it is going to impact things, and commercial issues involved. At least I get a feeling that this has not been widely disseminated. There might be some people in the or in some organizations.
So a lot of thinking is going on.
So that thinking needs to be shared.
Yes, sir.
There has to be a much wider debate on what is happening. And I'll repeat Dr. Pramod Dev's point. Electricity continues to be a concurrent subject in list 3 of the Constitution of India, the 7th schedule. So it is very much, the states have a lot of role to play in this. And unless the states and the center come together on it, people in between talked about rather low enforceability of REC mechanism or RPO obligations. This also arises because the way things are devised, the national interest may not be identical to the interest of every state. And when there is a conflict, some states will benefit, some states will lose. These are issues which only in conferences we mention, but I don't think it has been kind of discussed threadbare. Yesterday I mentioned consultation often is a conference in Vigyan Bhavan, where the agenda as well as the minutes are prepared before the conference. I get a feeling, and in fact that was one of the intentions of this 3-day workshop when we decided on this, is that a lot of it is happening because of, you can call it international pressure. If you take the globe as a whole, certainly a major item of the developed world today is climate change. And the developed nations can always gang up and try to bring it to a point of have mandatory targets. And if you can't do that, there is this technique of imposing sanctions through the United Nations. So there is certainly a certain amount of, or perhaps quite a substantial amount of international pressure, which is what is operating this. There is also a commercial interest. Everybody knows that the two nations where perhaps this RES already developed quite a lot are Germany and Spain. The European community as a whole, the European Economic Community, has been talking about a target of, they call it 20-20-20. That is, by the year 2020, 20% of the entire electricity produced will come from renewables. But Germany went still ahead. And Germany perhaps is the only country which has a document on the subject of state policy. They call it as energy vending. That is, which actually means transition in electricity, in energy. And they said that 80% of the energy will be from renewables by the year 2050. In the first policy, they included nuclear also, but after that they removed nuclear because the Green forces were powerful enough. So now, as per the stated policy of the German government, 80% of the energy mix will come from renewables by 2050. But as was pointed out by Mr. Verma, at least for 1 or 2 days, they have run the entire system using only renewables because the average demand is about 60,000 megawatts and that much of capacity, wind plus solar together, they have. If they had done it as an experiment, certainly people would have analyzed it, but those are not in the public domain as to what really has happened.
70% of the peak demand was met by.
Yeah. So, but one thing is clear, even common sense tells us, there are a lot of technical issues. The well-known technical issues are the infirm nature of these sources, the volatility, that is a cloud passing by, suddenly can bring down generation. I tried to look, when I was chairman MERC, I tried to look into some of these things, whatever is available in the public domain, only through the internet. And then I found that these countries are handling these by having auxiliaries, or what is it? Ancillary services.
So we have also mandated the ancillary services regulation, which has come from CERC, and it is going to be applicable from.
So ancillary services. The only point is today also people are not paying direct. Now ancillary services will only add to what is to be paid. That the central government will say that is for the states to. That's the problem, not ours. That's where the kind of policy making and implementation goes in different directions. Now it's a very true problem that when people can't afford even today's tariff, how can you afford ancillaries which are, or even the peaking power concept? If you want peaking power, the best peaking power is hydel, but hydel has plateaued off, even though there are, for a variety of reasons, ecological, environmental, relief and rehabilitation issues. So after hydel, it has to be gas, because ramp-up time, it has to be based on how fast you can ramp up. Gas again, we are in short supply. But, so depending on the way you argue, there are a number of impacts. What is the commercial impact? Commercial impact is, because of the informed nature, you need standby power from the conventional people. Mr. Verma pointed out to certain issues. Now, even in countries like America, in some parts, the conventional, the grid people are demanding a much higher tariff. Rooftop. Rooftop has been propagated in some countries through this net metering.
So there is feed-in tariff, then it is a very high.
But even if this, with net metering, to maintain the stability of the grid operators are demanding much higher tariff. That is, there's a commercial impact which will be different for different kinds of players. I think these things needs to be worked into. What appears to be happening is also a little kind of turf battle between MNRE and Ministry of Power, and whoever is closer to the Prime Minister at a particular point of time appear to be on the winning side. But that's not always permanent. Now, REC mechanism. The REC mechanism, Dr. Dev was the author of it, so he'll be able to give the insight out of it. The intention is very nice. The intention is what I mentioned earlier. There are comparative advantages for each of the renewable sources at different places, at different geographical locations. Wind, there is certainly a comparative advantage. Tamil Nadu, hydel or small hydel, there is a comparative advantage. Karnataka, solar, there is a comparative advantage, as I said, in Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Ladakh. So if you only have a RPO obligation, states which have a lot of comparative advantage for a particular form of renewable, how to incentivize them. So from the national level, that's a good concept. But in this kind of a federal constitution, how do you expect, as I said, there are states which benefit and states which lose in the process. For the states which lose, it's a kind of a double whammy, because they have to procure the power also. So many of these issues, the moment we face the issue, we brush it under the carpet and then talk something else. The regulators are not doing a good job, they are not enforcing. So that's what Ministry of Power will be telling the ministers, for example, as a part of the regulators. So the subject gets kind of sidetracked in various ways. I think these are some of the initial observations I wanted to make. First, and now doing discussion.
Most of the household was rooftop solar, and most of the households will trying to support that rooftop solar with the battery. Now, if you are promoting that, you are reducing the consumption of batteries, and if the batteries are changed every 2 to 3 years, how to recycle those batteries, and what are the environmental aspects of this much large consumption of batteries?
The rooftop is not being considered with battery. The grid will act as a backup. So when you are not using it, you will feed it into the grid and you can use it when you want to. So you will get a credit for the energy fed into the grid. It is called net metering. You will get a credit for whatever you are feeding into the grid, and when you want it, you can consume it. So net of your consumption, you will be paid for. If you are feeding into the grid, then you will have to pay if you are consuming from the grid. So it's called net metering, and net metering regulations have been mandated by 20 states already. Quite a few states have done net metering regulations. The CA has also made a regulation on the net meter, what will be the type of meter. So it will be an import-export meter. It will record the import as well as the export, and net of that will be paid for either by the consumer or by the utility. And as regards the environmental impact assessment, well, studies are going on, but there is no concrete result as yet. But what is being proposed is that there will be, if it is a wasteland, then there is no need of a crop below it. But if it is not a wasteland, then there will be certain crops which can be grown below the solar panel. But the environmental impact, I am not very sure what will be the result. Studies are still on.
See, what had happened is that when the target initially was not 100 gigawatt of solar, that time we had asked Power Grid to do a study, that green corridor study is available. And then that time Dr. Farooq Abdullah was Minister for MNRE. And he said, you have forgotten about my J&K. So they were asked to add Ladakh to it. Now obviously Ladakh,
There is a report.
they said they did that. But actually now with the 100 gigawatt, out of that 40 gigawatt is obviously rooftop. So for 60 gigawatt, they are doing the study. And it is not that you are going to take a contiguous piece of land and unleash it, because you are asking about what will happen to the local climate kind of thing. It's not a climate, it's the weather. That's not going to really happen, because you are still going to have a large tract of land. And obviously the potential candidate apart from the cold desert of Ladakh is also the Rajasthan, is the desert. But then if you see the solar radiation map, there are particularly you will find that the west has more of a solar and wind is in the south. So in fact the green corridor report is based on that. You are trying to connect with the through corridor. So I don't think we have to worry about that. The other issue is that what are the other implications in the commercial, and also how you really balance the grid. That is the real challenge.
Chairman said that there are commercial issues. They said that out of 40,000, 20,000 is industry based. We can definitely ask industry that put the solar. The plants industry would consume it. But the issue is that with the industry there is an element of cost subsidy involved. Now, industry would be happy that instead of paying paying 11 rupees, 15 rupees or whatever, right? 9 rupees, 8 rupees, different. They would consume whatever price of this solar, 5 rupees, 6 rupees, 7 rupees. But now the distribution company is at a loss. Now who would compensate the distribution company who loses that much of cross subsidy which was coming from the industry? That question nobody is addressing. Ministry is not prepared to listen to this. I asked the Joint Secretary that have you addressed that question? How are you going to tackle it? So there are such intricate issues. They will surface it they will not disappear. They will surface it as soon as you do this.
In fact, the net metering, like happening in the West, it's quite very disruptive where consumer doesn't have to be really the part of the utility. So that's very interesting because as you know in India, open access has not happened and it cannot happen for a very simple reason. I will give the example of Maharashtra because Maharashtra brings out in sharp focus the whole issue when we talk of electricity and also how do we really encourage green energy. In Maharashtra, total budget of MSEDCL is 55,000 crore. Out of that, only 14,000 consumers contribute 42% revenue. 14,000 consumers. And if you take 1 megawatt and above, that number is 1,80,000. And they contribute 68% revenue. On the other hand, you have 2 crore, 10 lakh consumers who contribute only 22% revenue. And out of, so this is a big process which is built. So that's why when I said that in the federal system, how are you going to tell the states? In fact, on one hand you are talking of making. So if industry has the choice, the server will like to go. If it's the industry, why wind power develop? Wind power did not develop only with the accelerated depreciation. In the original story, so they were allowed to have captive. So instead of going for any other fossil fuel-based captive, they found wind was a good solution. And the textile ministry also was giving subsidy for setting up their own captive. And that's how the TLEB found that many of the customers have migrated, and then obviously government played policy because at that time there was no Electricity Act 2003 or anything. Similarly in Maharashtra, what really helped the government came with a scheme of sales tax benefit, and you could transfer that benefit to your sister company. So apart from the accelerated depreciation, you are also getting tax benefit, and that again Maharashtra the tariff for industry was very high. So in fact, people who really went for their own wind farms was Bharat Forge, Bajaj. These were the people who found that it was much cheaper to go for wind farm. So that is the history. No? So when we talk of that, we have to consider when we are integrating green energy, how are we going to deal with this real issue? And that's why I said this whole approach of looking at it from saying that center will prescribe. Center cannot prescribe because establish capacity. And our peak load is not even 1 megawatt. So what is happening? So that is the, in addition to integrate it, we will have to add. One is the peaking capacity and also ancillary. So all that will be adding to the cost and have to sit together with the Prime Minister and agree. Otherwise, not going to happen. I also collected statistics from Gujarat. Similarly, slightly less than Maharashtra. Gujarat is considered to be again a model with the middle of, but this is a reality. Gujarat has gone for a very large solar. They have been able to manage that. But those are the issues which we have to face. Anyway, the whole idea was that we have more questions.
One more small I want to include that there is another issue of maintenance. Not by industry can do it there. Suppose I install a rooftop at my roof. It involves some electronics, some inverter, etc. So खराब होते हैं, who has to maintain it? वो छोटा we run around here and there on who replace the blade, but who maintains it? Who will take the responsibility?
Anyway, that is a bit care. The contractors have come. Because as far as the commercial establishments are concerned, they find it that instead of paying 10 rupees to company, this is a much cheaper option. And then there are contractors who call for a competitive bid, and they would get something like 6 rupees there, and they will be very happy, and that's what is very happy. But the question comes in then what DISCOM is going to lose that revenue.
Solar modules. They are fairly standardized and there are high standards available. It's not that 5 megawatt how much it can generate. We can fairly predict. We have installed a 12 megawatt solar power plant, one power plant, and we are able to fairly predict and say how much energy can be generated over a period of time annually or on a daily basis. Of course, it varies. Suppose if 5 megawatt plant is installed at Andaman and Nicobar, then probably on annual average, a solar will not generate power constantly, same power throughout the day. Depending on the solar area, power will vary, but we can fairly predict. And with regard to the battery-related systems, off-grid systems, my understanding is consumer far-flung remote villages where the districts are finding it difficult to economically viable, economically unviable for them to take a distribution transmission network for a small 50 or 100 villages, village of 50 and 100 hertz. They are probably these off-grid systems, solar power systems with battery. Even the battery will last for only 3 years, but at least they will have power. Instead of no power, they will have some power. Let it be a cost of 10 to 50 rupees. Government can subsidize, but ultimate aim is like in Elephanta Caves, which is mid-sea, they installed this off-grid solar system. It is working well because they found it uneconomical to lay the transmission line of that. And with regard to indigenization of solar modules, this GNSM now phase 2, most of the, unless there is demand and we develop a volume, there is a volume, indigenization and economy will not be achieved. Now solar earlier 3 years back it was 50 crore per megawatt, now it's around 6 crore per megawatt. And Indian companies now like BHL, Tata Solar, and there are many companies who they are able to manufacture from wafers, silicon wafer, they can manufacture the solar modules. And rest of the things also solar cables, now this one coming up is special PV solar cables, which are special cables the Indian manufacturers are manufacturing. So once demand grows, automatically there will be a lot of manufacturers will be there. I think in long run, and with regard to, I have studied the solar for Spain, Barcelona, which is another country apart from Germany, who have used substantial solar energy. And if you see the demand in that Barcelona, sir, the solar radiation, when solar radiation is more, the energy demand is less. If you see the total, because the solar radiation is more in the summer, and demand is more in the winter, because their heating demand is more compared to the cooling demand. Whereas in India, it is much favorable for us because we have more energy demand in the summer when we have more solar radiation. This is my submission.
Yeah, variability, but then as you said that you can do the forecasting. And forecasting can get more and more accurate. Same thing is true about the wind. So recently what the CRC has come out with those regulations. Those regulations are based on that. The question comes in that when the variation occurs, you can't expect that will be socialized, that somebody else will pay. Share that, and that's what now has been attempted. Earlier when we did it, 30% we had worked out. We found that obviously that time, I think the industry was not ready for forecasting. And in fact I left, and then Mr. Verma was still there. In fact he was agreed to stay the implementation of the regulation. So that is the history, but now we are going to that. As far as your second point, which is well taken, because if we were to see that, villages, reality today in Bihar and also in eastern UP, there is no hope of greed ever reaching. Some entrepreneurs who have gone and set up this gasifier. There are 1 kW, 2 kW gasifier. And initially these are the solar. They supply electricity for only 2 to 3 hours in the night. Then they also provide 2 compact fluorescent lamps to the for commercial they give this thing. In fact, the charge comes to something like 10 rupees per unit. The monthly consumption of the household does not exceed 2.5 rupees. That is the paying capacity, the money which they are spending on kerosene. So we had looked at in form of regulators, and we had said that after all, this is the responsibility of the distribution company. Why should a distribution company, just because the grid has not reached, he has to pay 10 rupees, he gets electricity only for 2 to 3 hours. Whereas tomorrow the grid reaches, its average tariff will be 2.5 or 3 rupees. Of course, whether he will get electricity or not, that's a different matter. But then that is the case. So let the distribution company give the entrepreneur who is setting up such system, what is the cost based on the cost plus basis, and let the consumers pay only what the grid cost is for the other consumers that are connected. And the difference will be given as a credit to the discount towards the renewable purchase obligation. That is the model which we have. So that can be done. So these are the 2 things that you have raised. The other things about the volumes, how large the market because the prices come down. In fact, today, the reason is like solar photovoltaic has completely overtaken solar thermal. Is that because China entered in a big way? So that's the reason. And in fact, I have seen in Spain, I have visited their load dispatch center. They have a special dispatch center for renewable energy. And I was surprised to find that the peaking demand also can be met using grid, because the forecasting is so accurate. That's possible, because otherwise there will be huge cost. You are not able to meet, then you will have to pay the penalty. So those are the things which are possible. But since we have started now, but it's not easy, because we are started only with something like less than 40 gigawatt, and we are looking at 175 gigawatt. So sure, you can add it.
Just to add to that, there is a domestic content requirement also in the tenders to promote the local industry. So you can't ban the import of solar equipment under WTO, but still we are doing that. So there is a case which has been taken up that we are putting a domestic content requirement. So
That is also
This domestic is only that frame, angle iron and all.
no.
Everything has been gone.
No.
100% is being imported.
Anyway, let's not get into it. If you see the history of wind, today you will find that the wind turbines are entirely manufactured here. There's nothing, no. That has changed. But there
Cells
is
will also come. Cells will produce material. There is a DCR payment. It happens over a period of time.
your point
is right. Certain people are still doing frame and module on there.
No, but it will come if there is a
There are some
demand.
companies who are manufacturing from that.
Yeah, but then it will come if demand is there.
Yeah. I am Nitin Chaudhary, Additional General Manager Finance from Nuclear Power Corporation. My observations is the push for renewable energy, which we are witnessing in the last decade in India, can be primarily for the 2 reasons. One is the genuine need to augment the electricity supply to various consumers, as Mr. Jain also had said. And another thing is our perception that we can contribute to meet the targets for reducing the emissions across the globe. To the extent we are pushing it to augment our electricity supply and even electricity to our most citizens who are situated far away distribution companies by different, it's a very well taken. I am wondering, is it that we are rushing to this second objective for meeting the pursued obligation onto ourselves to reduce the carbon emission? The reason being that, I will debate slightly on this topic, but just to highlight the point I am to make. With regard to the nuclear power, United Nations are
something analogous situation there with the developed countries. They have already emitted a lot. Their emissions still continue to be high. They have reached the limits of this emission-related side effect of major primary objective. Developing the nation. Now suddenly they have asked everybody, please reduce this thing, and they are going to, as a solution to it, many renewable commercial companies are coming up. To push the countries like India also, so that the initially cost for any developing a product in the market will be borne by Indians also. So to the extent the second objective is to be achieved, will it be appropriate for India to wait for some time? Because as economics, a new product is developed, initial cost of the product will be very high, but as the volumes developed in the cost gets tapered and it stabilizes. Will it be appropriate for India to wait for this thing and give a push, so that, as Verma ji has rightly pointed, to meet the minimal obligation, we don't have to say somebody buy it.
See, one thing we have to be very clear. I don't know how many people recall. We have a long-term energy policy study. The planning commission done. It was in 2006, 2008. That time the cabinet accepted. It has a 25-year projection. And that 25-year projection shows that in 2023, India will be importing 90% oil, 50% gas, 40% coal. However, surprised why India should be importing 40% coal. But the coal experts have confirmed. We keep talking about that we have coal for 150 years, 200 years. But they said that given that we have surface mining, and we will not be able to do that, that's why we will import it. So for India, I did that study, because I already had an argument with them. I said, that time already resources, renewable energy share was 3%, 5%, and in that it has been brought down to 3%. So isn't it extra? But he said, what can I do? Because when I say the wind potential is only 48 gigawatt. Now that, all that has changed. All that, they said we don't know what potential is. So we are looking at the renewable energy not because of climate. That we are taking advantage. We are looking at it from energy security point of view. And obviously our past experience also shows that one stage when CRP fixed the tariff for solar, our first tariff was 17 rupees 80 paisa based on cost plus. Today that tariff has come down to 5 rupees 5 paisa. That shows that how it can decline. The competition market is created. So one has to see how to integrate that. But obviously, again you cannot compare, because you have to see, as Mr. Verma is very rightly pointed out, what is the capacity utilization factor of solar? It is 17-18%. Wind today is around 25%. No, so those are the things. We have to take that into factor. But we have to realize that what is the India's own resource. Obviously, that's why we have never given up nuclear option. We want to do nuclear, but the reality remains that we have passed such a stupid law. We was a party to it. Now you cannot go back on that. So now with this insurance fund we have created, it's not going to help. No American company is going to invest. Then Japan, unless we can sort out that, that's also a problem. Because the Japanese company who also will not come. So our options are very limited. And that is the reason I think it has been a very clever thing. So in the climate debate, because China has already gone and declared something. So instead of doing that, we still recognize this principle that the differentiated responsibility. It's not that we are responsible. We are also doing this. That's why we are projecting it. And unfortunately, hydro has a large potential for various reasons, which are really the political reasons. Because this potential is in northeast and in the Himalayan region. We are having difficulty because the way initially the private sector showed initiative, but then after that they found that this investment takes a long time. So who's going to invest? And NHPC has not been really up to the challenge. So we are stuck with that. So we
hydro for a storage tank. That is possible now. We are going to have a basically one of the river, but with small also, and also we will have to go for some storage. That will meet our peaking demand, because when we talk of integrating all that, it is not a question of only integrating green energy. We will have to integrate also if we ever want to use even from the industrial waste, if you want to use that, you will find that it is possible to do that. So it is a how to do that. So in fact, it is a challenge for CA.
Sir, what you say is absolutely correct. But the point which you were trying to tell us, the history to this, that European Union especially, the developed countries are very mature. And they decided in the 90s, 80s and early 90s, that we are emitting so much of CO2, so you must adopt a technology called CCS. You would have heard the name. Carbon capture storage. Carbon sequestration. And they almost forced on us. And China, they said, you are the two countries in the world who are developing technologies and you have huge demand for capacity addition, and therefore this technology you must adopt in your power stations. And they decided that since this technology is coming up, so 12 units are to be experimented. Out of that, 10 units will be in Europe and 2 units in China, India, something like that. Soon after, they said no, 2 units in Europe, 10 units in China and India. So we doubted their integrity and the intentions, what they want to do. We wanted to share with them and ask them that, can you share this technology, what it is and all. They were not share, because this was manufacturer driven. And Storm and other companies were deriving them that, okay, somehow if we install, India and China have a huge capacity, coal-fired capacity, we must install that. We studied it a little bit more. We found that if we adopt that technology in our power station, the cost of generation just doubles. Because the cost of that technology, the footprint area and the equipment, etc. So if we are generating power at 5 rupees, I am just giving you an example, it will cost us 10 rupees a unit. The efficiency of generation from the power station will come down by 30 percentage points. 30% would mean about 12 percentage points. Now we were at that point of time short of electricity and so many, some percentage of people were not having power. Suddenly we will appear that we were 60-70% short of power. Cost of power is also so much. And the disaster management plan of this technology was not known. For example, Delhi power station, we separate out carbon dioxide and pump it somewhere in Himalayas or somewhere in the geological areas available to us. And tomorrow, we are surrounded by all not very friendly countries, and so suppose tomorrow there is a war or something, and somebody bombards a pipeline, what will happen to that CO2 which comes out? This Bhopal thing we have not been able to settle. And suddenly the CO2 thing would come out. And therefore, the government of India set up a committee, and R.V. Shahi was the secretary at that point of time. But Ministry of Power, in consultation with the Prime Minister at that time, we decided rightly so, we would not install this technology in our power station. And those who would go to attend such meetings, they would not commit on the behalf of the government of India what we are going to do. Then a proposal came from Germany that we would give you free for 2 units. You install it free. Even we refused that. Because if you give us free and suppose it succeeds in our then you will say that you will force us to install more. So that is the kind of thing they were telling us. And finally, I went to Germany, discussed with them. The professionals in that country, they were also opposed to this technology. They said we also don't favor, this should not be done. And till today, now that thing is over, CCS is no more an option, and nobody has tried this. Some 1 or 2 small units in Germany have come up, demonstration units. And Japan came up with a proposal. I'll finish in 1 minute. Japan told us that we have developed a technology of carbon sequestration. We can take out the carbon dioxide from our power stations. We will compress it in some small modules, give us the geological spaces, we'll bury our carbon dioxide in your river. There was some kind of funny proposals which were coming from those countries. So you were right that there was a pressure, there is still a pressure. That is how we are. But we have our own objectives that if solar comes into this thing, we must sort out our issues, technical issues. And in any case, we are going to save our fuel.
I think
2010 it was 18 point something, and today it has come to 5 rupees. And recently I heard that NTPC is going to sell power at 4 rupees also. So this has come down to 4 rupees after the adequate promotion was made by the government, and states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. These states have taken proactive initiatives. That is why the technology has been developed and it has come down to 4 rupees. It's not solar power. It's solar power. Okay. But it's around 5 rupees to hai, but it may come
in the reverse competitive rate, it has come down to 5 rupees.
It can further go down to 4 rupees also, depending on how you financing your loans and all also. So basically, I want to say that when the Delhi came up with the net metering regulation, when we were framing the net metering regulations, so I had a lot of problems that Renewable is having this problem and that problem. So my mentor told me, I have a lot of problems, you have a lot of problems. Shall we discuss the problem or shall we discuss the solutions? So when we came up this net metering regulation Delhi, this is regulation I just want to tell you. Under these regulations, the cost of generation will go down because when the settlement mechanism, because say suppose there is a 6 rupees power when settled with a 6 rupees power, the RPU benefit is going to is given to the DISCOM. Now 3 rupees presently the solar RPU is at 3.5 rupees per unit. That's not wrong. Lower. And the maximum price is 5.5 rupees. The benefit of 3.5 rupees is went to the DISCOM, and in our state the cross subsidy surcharge, basically the open access charges is up to 2.5 rupees. And if we calculate the surplus sale of power also, it is not more than 3.5 rupees. So it is reducing the cost of power. So it is one of the beneficial thing which I want to highlight here, and I think we should stress on more on the solutions, like the issues presently we have on the grid integration of the RE mainly. So that is, we look forward from anyone.
What is going on grid integration of renewable energy sources? There are the issues of variability, storage, ancillary services, spinning reserves, and deviation settlement mechanism. 150 megawatt deviation. All these are being addressed. There is already a regulation on ancillary services, which will unrequisition surplus. Plus, ancillary services will also be mandated for SVPs, STATCOM, etc., which are required to balance the reactive power. Then spinning reserves are also being mandated. Flexible generation is also being mandated. There is an order going to be there by CERC, which says that the plants can go down up to 55%. They will be compensated in the station need rate and reduction in efficiency to going down to 55%. So there is a flexible generation is also being mandated. So whatever is required for integrating the renewable energy with the grid, action is being taken. But most of these states have put forward that they will not be able to manage the variability within the 150 megawatt deviation settlement mechanism. So some changes are being brought in that also by CERC, but they have not yet been put up as a draft. But there is a committee on that which is looking into that.
These policies which have been framed by the government, like electricity bill, nobody knows what is the carriage and content. It is known carriage and content, but how it will work, they should elaborate a little bit.
Anyway, I
so that we can.
we have a different station for that. Let's not bring in that. But as I told you, carriage and content cannot happen unless you address the issue to subsidize agriculture. Because if you will not allow industry to work, start buying electricity from the market, who will cross-subsidize Sharad Pawar farm? That is the issue.
So in addition, pump storage is being thought of for storage purposes, so that when solar or wind is more, it can be taken to a pump storage station and it can be stored and energy used during peaking. So storage options are also being considered. Large scale batteries are being thought of, and there is a Indian Energy Storage Mission. But all these are in experimental stage, whether it is batteries, whether it is IV or other forms of storage. But pump storage is being encouraged, and there is going to be a mission on pump storage development.
It is a very strong lobby. They want us to go for storage. Storage should be the last option.
Yes, sir.
Pump storage is much better.
He is in favor of pump storage plants. So, though when you are in operation, there are problems in construction of the tail pool dam. But the studies have been done to identify 19,000 or 20,000 megawatts of sites for pump storage, and that has already been done by CEA, and we are going to push forward the development of pump storage for this.
Yeah, because like Maharashtra has that Khadgar hydro project, which is pump storage, which was done with Japanese system. But because the cost is more than 6 rupees, power was not being purchased. Now if you were to see at the peaking, it's not that the center can dictate.
Sir, one more thing I want to highlight. Like in Delhi, we had a proposal from MCD and DMRC to put up a 50 megawatt of plant, solar plant in Delhi. And they want to establish a solar plant. So my opinion to them was, you just build a cold storage or warehouse and then put a solar plant, so that you can utilize your land and also you can have the benefit of the solar also. But unfortunately, it's not happening, because when the Prime Minister came into power, then we were told to go to Gujarat and study the solar model in Gujarat, where we've seen that they have utilized well their land across the canals and as DACs and the barren lands. So that kind of initiatives or opinions come up.
Two objectives which are, as per my perception, highlighted: augmenting the overcapacity of the nation as a primary objective rather than the secondary objective. And incidentally, we are, maybe I can use the word, leveraging out of it when we are making a declaration at global level. But just I have some doubt in this. I think the new electricity at RGOs are being planned along with the RPOs also now. Then are we trying to step into the state government's domain, because they will have their own economic understanding how to augment the capacity and all that. Then forcing these obligations on them, is it consistent with this objective?
You see, it is only a draft. First thing is, when it went before the standing committee has given its report. From 10% it has been brought down to 5%. As far as carriage and content, again it has been left to the state, it has been postponed. Time frame has been given, which will be worked out, and the FOR has worked out a time frame of 5 to 6 years. So basically, attempt has been made to push forward this thing. Very importantly, Congress party members on that committee has given a dissenting note. I still have not seen the dissenting note. I don't know if it has come on the website. It is not on the website. It has not come, but they have said they are going to give a dissenting note. So it may meet the same fate of your Land Acquisition Act, unless we can take everybody on board. So that's why I don't think we need to really worry too much about that. But I again come back to the same issue, is that this cross subsidy, unless we can address this, even your penetration of renewable energy, that's going to be a big problem. Because today what happens is that why the RPOs are not being increased, regulators are obligated to do that, but regulators always are worried that if they fix higher RPO, in that case, the tariff will go up. And that's the reason no chief minister wants the tariff to go up. You would rather go for load shedding than increase tariff. And that's the ground reality today.
Sir, one
generators can have
It comes in that unless
There is a Green Corridor 1 report and there is a Green Corridor 2 report. So Green Corridor 1 is under implementation. It is around 40,000 crores. There is a green, it has two components, interstate and intrastate. So the intrastate has already started in Tamil Nadu and Rajasthan. So this Green Corridor is being implemented through German funds, KfW funds. And Green Corridor 2 is for the evacuation of the solar parks. So these solar parks are just 20,000 megawatts. And the parks which are connected on the interstate are being, the transmission for those parks under the Green Corridor 2. So that is the concept which is being followed for evacuation of these parks. But what you said about open access, actually you are talking about a captive consumption. That, you can't, open access is nothing that you are, what you are talking about is captive consumption in your own.
Yeah, captive consumption, but captive consumption on continuous basis for average. Because solar, if I set up a renewable plant, I will have a peak power and then no power in the night. But whereas my process plant requires a power on continuous basis.
Yeah.
So I am ready to compensate on annual basis. Say I set up a 10 megawatt plant, which will give me annual average of 1.6 or 1.7 megawatt on 24-hour basis. Can it be consumed there? Because neat metering concept says for a typical rooftop that it generate more in day and can consume in night. Net basis, the billing will be done.
Actually, if you are consuming in some other state, net metering is
Within same state.
within same state, it will depend on the regulator.
What is the law says this year?
Net metering is generally done on the same premise.
That's why I asked open access
It
and
is
net
done on the
metering.
same
But that's why I says open access for RE is permitted.
Yeah.
it is not possible because if you are going to generate from solar plant for only 10 hours and you say you want 24/7 power based on that kind of banking has problems because somebody else has to pay for that. So obviously the regulator will have to consider what is the cost for that.
So there is a banking charge in some of the SCRPs, they put a banking charge. So under that you can go under open access. Tamil Nadu has put a banking charge, so you can bank your energy with the grid and use it elsewhere. But then there is a banking charge and it makes it more expensive.
Sir, in Delhi, the state government has come up in a solar policy the concept of group net metering and virtual net metering, under which this concept falls in. But still the regulator has to frame the overall framework.
In fact, I have a question for you. What happens to merit order dispatch or merit order scheduling with renewables? Renewables must be scheduled.
Sir, it is a must run under the IEGC code.
So what is the implication of that?
Sir, what will happen is, sir, you can only disconnect renewables if there is an equipment or safety consideration of the grid. So when there is a safety question, you can ask him to disconnect, otherwise they are must run. So what will happen is the other plants will have to go up and down. Renewable will remain connected to the grid, and only under safety considerations you can ask them to back down.
You see, this, for example, it came to my notice
Yes.
that in India, the critical minimum of each of the thermal power plants has not been done by any independent agency.
Sir, now it has been done by CERC. They are saying 55% will be the technical minimum.
Now, if it is brought down to 55,
Yes, sir.
your kind of oil consumption will go up.
Yes, sir. They are going to pay you additional amount. They are saying that they have made bands for that your efficiency will go down by so much if you go down to this level. So they have made 3 or 4 bands in that 85 to 55 range, and you will be compensated for the reduction in station heat rate. You don't need oil support at 55. You will need it below 40%. CA said that you can go up to 40%, but CRC has kept it at 55%.
You see, again, the reason why it is happening is that your demand has not picked up.
Yes, sir.
For 2 reasons. One is the industrial growth has been still slow, and the DISCOMs don't mind if the industrial demand goes up, then they can buy more electricity. As far as the reluctance to buy more power, so that's creating problems. And there is always some cost and inefficiency. You are talking about thermal power plant.
It
That
will be
has
paid
to be,
for.
it has to be paid for.
It will be paid for. There is a commercial mechanism which is being put in place.
In fact, when we conducted this inquiry into that grid failure of July 2011, that's what we found. What was happening was that Maharashtra and Gujarat, this was the month of July, and there was a very heavy rain. So at night time, and that's the time the wind blows at full speed.
Yes, sir.
So both had nearly 1000 megawatt of wind. And since there was congestion, there was no interconnection. Whereas the north wanted to draw more power, but the connectivity was impaired and there were messages sent. But both the states, load dispatch center kept saying, oh, what will you do? There was wind is must run. They didn't realize that wind has to must run means that your thermal has to back down.
Yes,
Whatever happens. That's the only thing. That's what we had. Varma was saying. You remember that he kept saying, oh, wind created this problem for us. But you have to accept that because there are certain system demands which had to be.
So there were no commercial mechanisms for that backing down. Now that commercial mechanism is being put in place that if you back down, you will be compensated for it. Earlier people went by that 85% PLF, so if you won't go below 85, but now that commercial mechanism is coming.
Yeah, now I think what Mr. Raja has mentioned is actually a real concern, because as you grow in capacities, this is bound to happen. It is happening in Tamil Nadu, it is happening in Rajasthan. It is happening for commercial reasons, but it is always carved under the technical reasons that the congestion is there, the transmission capacity is not there, so you back down. There are backing down of wind power project which is rampant in Tamil Nadu and Rajasthan. So unless and until we address this problem, there is no going away from this problem. On the other hand, how accurately do we forecast our loads? That's a critical question. Whenever there is a discussion about renewables, we never talk about how accurately we forecast loads. That's also an area where one needs to work.
I take it that there are no more questions.
Sir,
One last.
So regarding REC mechanism, it was a good concept, but it's not working very good in India. So how do you see the REC market in future? Whether it will continue because the investors are facing huge losses and all.
The simple reason is REC market did not work. The idea was that Tamil Nadu was already had RPO obligation of 11% is going to 12%. You could not expect Tamil Nadu to increase that further. Whereas the potential for wind is there, more capacity will be added. Whereas we looked at Delhi, Delhi had that time fixed no RPO. So idea was that power cannot flow from Tamil Nadu to Delhi. So idea was that this will be done through REC. So the real challenge was that the state regulators had to increase RPO. And we realizing that, again the concern will be the tariff will go up. So FOR did a study. That study was up to 2017. That is the 12th plan period. And what we found that the impact on tariff, retail tariff was only 1.5 paisa. And for a state,
And then they came with proof that their prices were lower than the prices from where the DISCOM was purchasing. And after all the hearings, we found that there is no real-time data available. That's one thing.
Center is very difficult because it is a very small organization. It has always been part of the state transmission utility. And how do you really create career?